Welcome to Stifel's Sightlines podcast, focusing each week on a topic or two important to investors. Well, greetings and welcome to the Sightlines podcast. This is Michael O'Keefe, Stifel's Chief Investment Officer. Hey, in this episode, I want to start what might be a little bit of a series on artificial intelligence and the impact it's having in a variety of ways. And what I want to start with is the impact on the labor market. So candidly, as I've been out and about, meeting with clients, sometimes in individual meetings, sometimes in group settings, I get the question a lot, hey, what's going to happen to the job market? And there's sort of this undercurrent of fear and worry that we're going to have massive unemployment happen quickly because of artificial intelligence. And so, we kind of pulled a bunch of studies and did a bunch of work to try to understand where we're headed. And so I want to kind of summarize that so far. And again, we'll get in a little bit to the impact on businesses and earnings and things like that in future episodes. But let's kind of start maybe with where we are. We happen to be in an environment where we've got a pretty resilient labor market, but some cooling on the edges, right? So things still seem positive. Unemployment's at, I think, 4.2%, and we're still seeing jobs created. But the pace of hiring has slowed a little bit. Maybe it's a little harder to find a job, things like that. And so, we're watching for cracks. And as we've talked about before, that does influence basically Fed policy. If the job market weakens, the Fed's going to pay attention to that, and that would cause them to cut rates a little further. But anyway, back to the topic of AI, just to kind of get into it. How are people or how companies sort of utilizing AI and who's doing it? And so basically, studies, and there's a bunch out there, show that AI is having an impact. There are companies and a good number, a good percentage that are expecting to reduce their workforce in some ways, but then hire in other ways, really around new skills, right? And it's not just about how to build AI models, but it's actually how to use AI effectively. I think that's an important undercurrent here, is learning how to use these sort of people-friendly tools to do a better job with the kinds of AI agents that are being created. And then another theme that's sort of weaving through all this is the idea of reskilling. So somebody's in a role, they don't really have those skills, they can learn those skills. And so, for example, in telecom, one of the surveys we saw indicated that 96% of those companies are expecting to reskill. They're going to try to create programs to reskill their employees, in part because they want to plan for the buildup of automation. And I think it's 82% of those companies say that they're planning for more automation, as is everyone in a way. But anyway, another sort of undercurrent or theme is that while it's easy to be worried about cost cutting, jobs are going to get eliminated, which again, some ways they will, in other ways they won't. But what we're noting as well is that the most successful users of AI have a different angle. They take a different approach. They don't think in terms of cost cutting. They think in terms of amplifying growth. And so for companies and industries that are more exposed to AI, wages are rising about 2 times faster. And revenue in those businesses is rising about 3 times faster than industries that are less exposed to the technology. So it's an early indication that we could sort of see AI not be so much used for cutting costs, although some of that might happen, but more it's going to be about being more efficient, more effective, and more able to grow more quickly, which is what everybody's trying to do in terms of the corporate world for sure. Now, when company leaders themselves are sort of surveyed about impacts in the near term, I'll call it a little over a third. I have a number, 38% of AI users expect little workforce change, but there's certain kind of service roles and things like that where we're going to see some displacement, but then job growth in certainly areas like software engineering, things like that. Now, more notably, though, a couple studies are out that sort of look out to call it 2030. And in one of them, at least, it's expecting 92 million jobs to be displaced. So those are jobs that get eliminated. That's a lot of jobs. It's 8% of the workforce. And 170 million jobs created. So a net gain of 78 million jobs, but with some reallocation, if you will, of the workforce. And again, back to that idea of reskilling, I think it's important for people to be thinking that way. How can I jump into this and be a part of it, basically? And so, in the near term, the fastest growing roles, of course, are people that are experts and knowledgeable in AI and machine learning. Some of the areas that are declining and this, you can see this as you go around, cashiers and as an example, and certain, sort of repetitive functions like accounting. There's probably going to be some applications of AI in areas like that. And so anyway, I would just say that the other focus for employers is it's not so much that they want people that are just pure AI experts, but they're looking for people for those kinds of skills, right? In other words, can you use AI in your role to be more effective? And anyway, so that's all sort of the positive and the impact. Some of the potential frictions when it comes to the adoption of artificial intelligence includes those skills gaps. So the idea that, hey, we don't quite have the expertise yet to use this stuff effectively. Another would be, and this is an interesting one, organizational cultural resistance. So I think what we're going to see out there are some companies that say, culturally, we're not going to do this. We're all about the people, so we're not going to use AI. And that, maybe that's one way to go about it. But in the end, you're going to miss out on the sort of that amplification opportunity and maybe, cost-cutting opportunity that AI will afford companies. And then finally, regulation, which again is a big open question. There's not, it seems to me, not a ton going on there yet, but with the potential for regulators to want to come in and control things. So that all of those frictions maybe argue for a gradual shift in the job market. But of course, looking out 5 years, that shift that we talked about in terms of millions of jobs being gone and created, that's relatively soon. So again, we'll see some gradual shifts, but maybe picks up with some acceleration. In any event, I guess to close out, just to reiterate, basically in the very near term, this is going to be more of a focus on two concepts: the reallocation or sort of reskilling of the workforce and sort of using AI to incrementally change how things get done. And so that's, one important thing. Another important thing is to not be thinking about it as purely just cost cutting, but instead be thinking about it as an amplifier of growth, an amplifier of the use of human expertise, right, which the AI is learning from, and being able to do that in a way that helps your business, basically. So anyway, more to come. As I mentioned, we'll have a couple other topics at least in this realm in the near term. But we really appreciate you, taking the time to listen to this episode, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks again for listening to Stifel's Sightlines. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to automatically receive each week's podcast in your feed.